To use a micro SD card, I used a SD card holder, which you can put the micro SD card in there, and you can solder the wires on there, and it's a simple way of getting a micro SD card into a project. So let's plug it into a JPIC and try out an application example with it. Here I have the JPIC connected to a SD card and a temperature humidity module. When the program boots, when the JPIC boots, mounts the SD card and then starts running a user program, which in this case makes the Windows XP theme tune, and then it starts measuring the temperature, and it's trying to set the temperature to be 24 degrees if you had a relay connected to a heater, and it also measures humidity at the same time. We can stop that application running on it. We can clear the screen, and we can get a list of all the functions that are available. You can see it runs a file called autoexec.bat is run when it's boot, and we can have a look at that by going cat autoexec.bat, and it says play this media and heat 24. So what it is doing play media startup.raw, and then it's doing the heat command. So if we look at the heat command, it's read the temperature and adjust pin B7 to maintain that temperature. We can't do the accelerometer one. We can play other things on it, so we can play things like that. Can't play much of it because it's copyrighted. We have a Windows Media Player, well, WMP. In this case, you won't be able to see this very well probably because it's tiny down here, but I can I have a list of files, and I can scroll down them, and I don't know what any of these are, but I'll play them. Here's one. And you can see you can play your files. To get out of that, you can go to exit and exit. And we're back to waiting for the command from the serial port. We've got a text editor, so we can go. It's not a fancy text editor, but you can write test, and we type EOF on a new line to finish. And now we can, that's saved to the SD card now, so we can type it back, read it back, which is 123.txt, and it reads it back. We can remove the file, 123.txt, and now it's deleted from the SD card. We can rename files, remove them, copy them, play them. Recording is a bit tricky because there is the possibility of dropping data to the card, because the SD card, as I recall, the maximum allowable latency to a card is 250 milliseconds, which is a lot when we only have about 10k of buffer. But it works quite well. You have to choose your appropriate SD card to get good results, but one I've got in it is a Transcend in it at the moment. As well as playing music, we can also record it. This black wire here is connected to my cell phone. And there's a few different ways we can record, various ways of whether or not cluster allocation is done or not, whether or not the data is continuous, a continuous block, or if we record to swap file as a continuous block, then copy back to the FAT32 file system. This SD card I've put a swap file on. If you don't have a swap file on your SD card, you can't use that option. this one is the most likely to be glitch free because it's sequential writing, low level disk write, and it's a continuous block, so there's no reading done for this one at all. This one, there is some reading and some writing, and fragmentation can happen, so that one can glitch. The last two are the best ones to use. So we can try them out. ZZZA, and if it does glitch, there will be a little LED that lights up there and you'll hear a little geek sound. It's usually only at the very beginning of the audio file that you get that, but we'll see if we get it this time or not. Nope, we did not get it. We did not get a glitch that time. We can try again. See if we get a glitch. Nope, no glitch. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing. I would have hoped to have got some dropped audio. We can try the other one. And that one is very unlikely to glitch. And the last one, record swap it. This is very similar to the record CONT, because they both use continuous areas of space on the disk. And then it copies it back over. And we can play those audio files back again. That's the first one. Second one, and the third one. Anyway, so that's recording audio. We also have a relay which we can turn off and on. It reads pin B10 and outputs B7, and also plays these on and off sounds. The relay goes down these pair of wires to a relay sitting under the table and goes to this light. If you can go to a heater or something, but in this case it just goes to a light. And when I unplug it, which is kind of cool. And of course, if I had a heater in it and I was interested in keeping the temperature at the room at a certain temperature, I could use the heat value, which is, so if I set it at 29 degrees, which is above this temperature, it will, in this case, it turns on the light. And if I was to have set the heat point to something lower than the room temperature, say 14, it turns off the light. Oh, we can just read the temperature. That just tells you the temperature and the humidity. If I blow on the humidity sensor, the humidity will go up. And we can also log it to disk. This one here can also be used as equivalent to the heat function, but you can also log the temperature and humidity to disk. So we can type, so this will be logging the temperatures to disk. You could take out the SD card and put it into a computer, but we can also just see what it logged. And there it goes. Got the time, temperature, and humidity. So that leaves everything but the accelerometer. So I'll plug in the accelerometer next. I've hooked up the accelerometer. It uses SPI, so the SD card and the accelerometer use SPI, and the humidity, temperature module and the screen both use I2C. So this is an interesting test to use multiple things on the same bus. Now with the accelerometer, there is some fancy stuff that we can do. Calibrate the accelerometer and save to disk. I won't run that at the moment because it's I have to be able to move the accelerometer in 6 different orientations, and it'll do an inverse matrix and figure out those the corrections it has to do, assuming that the 3 MEMS devices inside the accelerometer are perfectly orthogonal. You could do a more fancy one, but this is just a simple 3 by 3 matrix that you have to do an inverse. So it's interesting that the PIC chip does the inverse for it. Once it's done the calibration, you've put it in the 6 different orientations, it creates a file. Now, what was the file called? I must have it on disk. It's probably corrections. Oh, here it is. This IIS 3D HHC corrections.txt. So if we copy that, we get these corrections. So these are corrections that applies to the accelerometer readings to improve them. This accelerometer is not designed for high G's, it's designed for tilt measurement and those sorts of purposes. It's not good enough to measure the moon passing overhead, but it would need to be 1,000 times more sensitive. But it's pretty good with measuring very small movements in tilt and being very stable over long periods of time. So it's interesting. You can put it on a desk and you can't move it. You can't sit at the desk without being able to detect it in that thing. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, pretend we've already done the accelerometer calibration. We can then save, take accelerometer readings. On the screen, on the computer screen, you have the timestamp X, Y, Z, and this is the angle from being perfectly level. So that's your tilt. On this little screen, the real life screen, which you have X, Y, Z in the elevation here, so I can see it says 2.6 degrees, and as I move it, it's not the accelerometer, this is the accelerometer. You can see that the angle changes, so 10 degrees angle, 11 degrees, 15 degrees, and it matches what you see on the screen. So you can see the z-axis is pretty much 1, and if I move it to, I think this is the y-axis, the y1 gets about 1, and if I move to the x-axis, x is about 1. So it's very sensitive. You get an accuracy of, I think it's 0.01 of a degree or something over a long period. But yeah, if I just push on the paper, you can see it doesn't take much to move it. And then it saves it to disk as we do this, so we can stop that, and we can you can print back the readings you got. So those are saved on the SD card, which you can read with a computer. So apart from the accelerometer calibration, I've shown pretty much everything out of this crazy little thing I decided to do. So I hope that was entertaining.